That evening started off like any other. I wasn't planning to come home early. I didn't even think about it, really. But work wrapped up ahead of schedule. The highway was unusually clear, and I figured I'd surprise Lauren with takeout from her favorite Thai place. Something light to balance out the midweek drag. Nothing dramatic. I pulled into our parking garage around 5:45 p.m., about an hour earlier than usual. I remember thinking, as I stepped out of the car, that the air smelled like rain. Not in a stormy way, just that soft, earthy scent that comes before everything gets washed clean. It felt symbolic at the time, though I didn't know why. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. 5 flights. I was feeling good. Tired, but the good kind of tired. The kind you feel when your life seems steady. The front door wasn't locked. That wasn't completely unusual. Lauren sometimes forgot to lock up if she'd just run out to grab the mail or take a quick phone call on the balcony. But still, I hesitated. I stood there in the doorway listening. Silence. Not the kind that welcomes you home. The kind that stands still like it's waiting for something to happen. I stepped inside and set the food down on the kitchen counter. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. One of them had a faint red smear near the rim. I paused. Frowned. Lauren didn't usually wear lipstick. Maybe on special occasions, weddings, birthdays, a work event here and there. But never at home. Never on a regular Wednesday evening. That was the first itch I couldn't quite scratch. I walked down the hallway toward our bedroom, already loosening my tie, expecting maybe to hear the shower running or a podcast playing. Instead, everything was still. The lights were off, the door slightly ajar. When I stepped into the room, I saw it right away. There, on the nightstand next to Lauren's side of the bed, sat a half-full glass of wine. Deep red, still glistening like it had just been poured. Lipstick on the rim, same shade as the one in the sink. A bold, glossy red. Definitely not hers. And next to the chair by the closet, almost draped like a gentle afterthought, was a neatly folded men's dress shirt. Not mine. It was light blue, maybe even pale gray in the soft lighting. Expensive looking. Pressed. Smelled faintly of cologne. That sharp, musky scent that doesn't belong to you but somehow gets into your nose anyway. Like a territorial warning. I froze. Something inside my chest dropped. I couldn't move at first. I just stood there, hands at my sides, staring at the shirt like it was some kind of riddle. But it wasn't. It was the clearest statement in the world. It didn't belong to me, which meant it belonged to someone else. And someone else had been here. That's when Lauren walked in. She must have heard me come in, because she didn't look surprised to see me. She just looked unreadable. Not guilty. Not exactly calm either. Just neutral. She was drying her hands on a towel, still wearing the dark tank top she usually changed into after work. Her hair was pulled up into a messy bun, and her face was bare. No makeup. Certainly no red lipstick. Her eyes moved immediately to the shirt, then to me, then back again. But she didn't panic. She didn't stutter. "Oh," she said casually, like she just remembered something trivial. "That's from the dry cleaning. They must have mixed up your order again." My eyes stayed on hers. She didn't flinch. "And the wine?" I asked quietly. "You celebrating something?" She smiled, just slightly, and walked toward the dresser like she wasn't standing in the middle of a crime scene. "Amanda stopped by," she said. "Had a glass while we caught up. You know how she loves to wear that ridiculous red lipstick. She probably left the glass there. I didn't even notice." I didn't respond. I didn't nod. I just watched her open the top drawer, shuffle through some clothes, and close it again. Like nothing was wrong. Like this was just another moment in our day. The thing is, I wanted to believe her. I really did. She sounded so confident, so composed. But that's what shook me the most. The way the lies came out smooth. No hesitation. No pause. As if she had the explanation ready. As if she'd been rehearsing it. I walked over to the shirt and picked it up. "Dry cleaners mix-up?" I asked, turning it over. No tag. No plastic. Just a perfectly folded button-down. Not a crease in sight. Not one that suggested it had just come from a plastic-wrapped hanger. She shrugged. I don't know, babe. It was on the counter when I got home. Maybe it came in with your stuff. I hadn't been to the dry cleaner in 3 weeks. I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I put the shirt back where it was, gently, as if it might explode. Okay, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like it belonged to someone else. She smiled again, softly. Long day. I nodded. Yeah, traffic was easy, though. I turned and left the bedroom. I didn't ask more questions, didn't accuse, didn't raise my voice, but every part of me was on fire. My skin, my stomach, my throat. Everything buzzed with a slow, low-level panic that I couldn't shut off. That was the moment it began. Not the affair, no. That had started long before, though I didn't know it yet. But this was the moment I stopped trusting her. It was like someone flipped a switch in my head. Suddenly, every late night, every vague explanation, every random mood swing over the last few months started lining up like puzzle pieces. I couldn't prove anything, not yet, but the picture was forming. I sat down on the couch, phone still in my pocket, untouched takeout growing cold on the counter behind me. Lauren stayed in the bedroom for a while, then came out a little later, acting like everything was normal. She curled up next to me, bare legs touching mine, and asked what we should watch. I picked something random, some comedy I wouldn't remember the next day. We sat like we always did, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her. But I felt like I was sitting next to a stranger. And in the back of my mind, a voice I couldn't ignore whispered the truth. Something's not right. She's lying. And you already know it. After that night, everything changed. Not on the surface, but underneath. Outwardly, we still moved through the routines of our life together. Mornings filled with coffee and tight schedules. Evenings spent in front of the TV or scrolling through our phones in silence. But for me, something fundamental had shifted. Trust is strange like that. You can't always feel it when it's there. But the moment it's gone, it leaves a hole so big you trip over it every time you try to act normal. I didn't say anything to Lauren after the shirt incident. I didn't ask again about the lipstick-stained glass or the mysterious visit from Amanda. I played my part. I smiled when I was supposed to. I nodded when she talked about her day. But behind it all, my mind had slipped into detective mode. Quiet, watchful, suspicious of everything. Started small, little things, like how she began working later than usual. She always said it was a busy season, that the firm was pushing a new product or chasing deadlines. And I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the timing was too convenient. She'd leave before me in the morning, come back well after dark, sometimes still in full makeup, her hair barely out of place. No sign of exhaustion, just a quiet tension in her jaw and this distance, something unreadable in her eyes. She started smelling different, too. Subtle at first, like she'd switched shampoo or tried a new lotion. But then, one night, she came home smelling like men's cologne. Not strong, not obvious, just enough to make the air around her feel unfamiliar. I asked about it. Lightly, casually. She laughed it off. Probably from the guy I sat next to at the client dinner, she said. He was practically bathing in the stuff. I couldn't get away fast enough. And just like with the shirt, she had an answer ready. Too ready. Still, I said nothing. I smiled. I nodded. I kissed her good night. But that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how many lies she'd told me that sounded just like the truth. A few days later, I was looking for batteries in the hall closet when I found something tucked behind the towels. Something that didn't belong there. A small, sleek bottle of men's cologne. Full. Brand new. And definitely not mine. I picked it up slowly, turning it over in my hand. There was no receipt. No tag. Just that crisp, expensive scent that lingered in our bedroom some nights and had me second-guessing my sanity. When I asked her about it later, her face didn't change. Not even a flicker. Oh, that was a gift from a client. One of those holiday giveaways. I meant to toss it, it's too strong. A gift from a client. A bottle of cologne in the back of our towel closet. I nodded, handed it back to her and said, "Makes sense." But it didn't. None of it made sense anymore. I started noticing more. Little things you don't think to pay attention to until you're looking for them. Like how she always tilted her phone away from me when she texted. Or how she started locking her screen before setting it down. How the passwords changed. How she turned off her location sharing to save battery. There were nights I'd wake up and find her side of the bed empty. I'd find her sitting on the couch with the TV off, staring at her phone, face lit by the screen, fingers moving fast. When I asked what she was doing, she'd say she couldn't sleep, that she was scrolling TikTok or reading articles. But when I walked past her to get water, she'd turn the screen off too quickly, too practiced, like she'd been caught rehearsing a lie. I tried not to spiral. I told myself I was overthinking, that stress was making me paranoid, that if I wasn't careful, I'd become the crazy husband who ruined his marriage by imagining shadows that weren't there. But the more I tried to dismiss it, the more the shadows took shape. One night, I found a wine glass in the kitchen sink. Red lipstick again. Same glass as last time. Same color. Lauren hadn't worn makeup in over a week. I asked if Amanda had stopped by again. She hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. Yeah, she did, just for a bit. You must have been out. I hadn't left the house all day, and that was the moment I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. After that, I started keeping mental notes, timelines, patterns. She'd say she was at the office, but her stories didn't always line up. Once, she told me she had a team dinner that ran late, said they'd gone to a seafood place downtown. But the next morning, I found a receipt from a rooftop bar near the east side, 2 cocktails, 1 charcuterie board, signed with her name. I never mentioned it. Didn't need to. The real story was starting to write itself. I stopped sleeping well. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat, my chest tight with anxiety. I kept replaying the same thoughts over and over. What if I was wrong? What if I was right? What would I do if she admitted it? What if she never did? I thought about asking her outright, sitting her down and putting it all on the table. The shirt, the lipstick, the cologne, the receipts. But every time I looked at her, I saw the same face I used to love so easily, soft, confident, unreadable. And I realized I wasn't ready. Not yet, because if I asked her and she lied again, that would be it. The end. And if she told the truth, well, that might be worse. So I waited. I watched. And slowly, the woman I thought I knew started slipping through my fingers like smoke. The bed felt colder every night. Her hugs got shorter. Her laughter, when it came, felt distant, hollow, like it didn't reach her eyes anymore. Sometimes I'd look at her across the dinner table and wonder, who are you texting under the table? Who are you thinking about when I'm talking? And worse, do you even notice I'm still here? One night, as she slept, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and just watched her for a long time. The rise and fall of her chest. The way her hand curled slightly under her pillow. The peacefulness on her face that I couldn't feel for myself anymore. And I realized something. It wasn't just the possibility of betrayal that broke me. It was the slow erosion of everything we'd built. The secrets, the distance, the way she made me feel like a stranger in my own home. That was the hardest part. Not knowing what she'd done, but knowing deep down that she wasn't mine anymore. Not really. Not in the ways that mattered. Sometimes, even when you know something's wrong, you still hold out hope that maybe, just maybe, you're wrong. That it's all been a misunderstanding. That the shirt was just a shirt. That the cologne was a weird gift. That the lipstick was from a friend, and the late nights were about deadlines, not deception. You want to believe that the person you love isn't capable of gutting you while still kissing your cheek goodnight. But hope is a fragile thing. And one quiet Sunday morning, mine finally broke. It started with a business trip. Mine, not hers. I was supposed to be gone for 4 days, New York, back-to-back client meetings, a networking dinner. The kind of thing that had me living out of a suitcase and glued to a hotel Wi-Fi connection. But on the 3rd day, one of my meetings got canceled. Just like that, my schedule opened up, and instead of wandering around Manhattan K*ling time, I changed my flight. I didn't tell Lauren. I figured I'd surprise her. Maybe that was the last naive thought I ever had. The plane landed around 10:30 p.m. The airport was quiet, almost eerie. I didn't check my phone until I got to baggage claim, half expecting a text from her. Something routine like hope the meetings are going well or miss you. Nothing. Just silence. I got in a cab, asked the driver to take the long way back. I wasn't in a rush. Not yet. The city looked different from the back seat. Familiar but colder. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I already knew something was waiting. When we pulled up to the apartment, the lights were on. That was normal. She hated coming home to darkness. But the curtains in the living room were closed, and they were never closed. Not unless something or someone was inside that wasn't supposed to be seen. Still, I told myself to relax. Maybe she was just watching a movie. Maybe she had a headache. I paid the driver, walked quietly up the stairs, and unlocked the door without making a sound. No TV, no music, just faint laughter, hers, and another voice. Male. It was coming from the bedroom. My chest tightened. I didn't move right away. I just stood in the hallway, frozen. Like my body was waiting for my heart to catch up. I could hear murmurs now. Low voices. The soft creak of the mattress. Then silence. I walked toward the door. It was half closed, just like the night I found the shirt. I pushed it open slowly. And there she was. Lauren. In bed. With him. I didn't know who he was. His face didn't matter. He could have been anyone but me. That's what hit the hardest. The way she looked at him. The way she reached for him. The way she didn't even seem surprised when she saw me. For a moment, none of us said a word. I stood in the doorway, still holding my suitcase like an idiot. She sat up slowly, the sheet clutched to her chest, her eyes wide, but not in panic. More like shock at being caught mid-script. The guy beside her stared at me, then down at himself, then at her, as if waiting for instruction. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just asked the only thing I could think to say. How long? Lauren opened her mouth, closed it. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. So I asked again, louder. How long has this been going on? Mark, she whispered. I didn't know you were coming back tonight. Wrong answer. I laughed. I actually laughed. Because in that moment, I realized I'd been looking for a confession, or maybe even a reason. But all she had was scheduling errors and a half-dressed stranger in our bed. The guy, who still hadn't said a word, stood up awkwardly and started putting his clothes back on. I should go, he muttered. No, I said quietly. You're already here. Might as well finish the scene. Lauren *T him a look, some mix of panic and pleading, but it was too late for that. The damage was done. Her lies, her stories, her cover-ups. They all collapsed in on themselves like a house of cards. He left quickly. Didn't even meet my eyes on the way out. The door clicked shut behind him. And just like that, we were alone again. She reached for me. Mark, don't, I said. Please, don't insult me with whatever story you've got lined up. She blinked fast, tears forming. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I believe you, I said. You weren't supposed to get caught. I didn't mean to hurt you. Another laugh, bitter this time. That's the thing, Lauren. You didn't even think about me. You didn't think I'd come home. You didn't think I'd notice the lies. You didn't think at all. She tried to speak, but I was already walking out of the room. I didn't need to hear the rest. Nothing she said would change what I saw. Our bed. Our room. Her hands on someone else. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. My suitcase sat at my feet, unopened. The silence in the apartment now felt different, heavier, like the air had thickened. Lauren came out minutes later, dressed in a hoodie and sweatpants. Hair tied back, eyes red. She sat across from me. I didn't look at her. I don't even know why it happened, she said. It started when you were working those long hours. I felt alone. I know that's not an excuse. You're right, I said. It's not. She wiped her face. It wasn't serious. It was just a way to feel something again. I thought I could control it. I finally looked at her. You're talking about it like it's an addiction. like it was a bad habit. But you didn't sneak off to smoke cigarettes, Lauren. You chose to destroy something real. And you didn't stop. You didn't come clean. You let me fall asleep next to you while you lived a double life. She broke down then, full sobs, and maybe some part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. Maybe I still loved her. Maybe I always would. But that night, watching her cry didn't move me. It just made it real. It made it final. I didn't sleep. I packed a bag at 3 a.m., quietly, while she slept curled up on the far side of the bed like she was trying to shrink into the sheets. I left my key on the kitchen counter, next to the cold takeout containers we never opened. No note, no goodbye, just silence, and the sound of my footsteps disappearing down the stairs. I left without slamming the door. No dramatic exit, no final words, no cinematic pause in the hallway. Just a quiet click of the lock behind me and the faint echo of my footsteps down the stairwell. I didn't even really know where I was going. I drove aimlessly at first, half thinking I might end up at a friend's place, or maybe a motel off the highway. Somewhere cheap, somewhere no one would look. But as I drove through the empty streets, I realized I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want explanations or condolences. I just wanted to disappear, vanish, slip out of her life as easily as she had slipped someone else into mine. I found a listing on my phone. A month-to-month studio in a weathered brick building on the edge of the city. The kind of place you rent when your life has fallen apart and you're too proud to admit it. I moved in the next day with one duffel bag, my laptop, and the bitter kind of silence that fills the air when your soul's been gutted but your body's still going through the motions. The apartment smelled like mildew and cheap paint. The floor creaked in all the wrong places, and the windows barely shut all the way. But it was mine. No photos on the walls. No echo of perfume in the sheets. Just solitude. I got a job delivering groceries under a fake name. Just a few shifts a week, enough to keep the lights on and the rent paid. I didn't want a career. I didn't want purpose. I wanted the noise, footsteps, traffic, the rattle of carts and elevator doors. Anything that kept me from sitting in silence and remembering the look on her face when I caught her in our bed with someone else. I stopped checking my phone after a few days. The messages came in waves at first. Texts, missed calls, then emails, then voicemails. All from Lauren. Please call me. Just talk to me. I need to explain. I didn't mean to hurt you. It just got away from me. Please. I can't fix this if you won't talk to me. I read the first few. Then I stopped. Deleted them without opening. Blocked her number. Not because I hated her, but because every word she sent chipped away at the wall I was trying to build between the life I had and the life I was being forced to live now. I thought about calling my brother or my friend Alex from college. Thought about crashing on someone's couch, or even telling my parents the truth. But I couldn't bring myself to say the words out loud. Once you say it, it becomes real. Stops being a nightmare and turns into your new reality. So I disappeared. I woke up late, stayed up even later, slept on a mattress that barely fit the floor, drank gas station coffee, and lived on cheap instant noodles and frozen burritos. I became background noise in my own life. Placeholder. I didn't shave, didn't cut my hair, didn't check the news. I wore the same hoodie for a week and let the dishes pile up in the sink until I couldn't stand the smell. And still, every night, she haunted me. Not the version of her I left behind, but the one I used to know. The girl who laughed with her whole body. The one who danced barefoot in the kitchen. Who left notes in my jacket pocket before big meetings and said, "home," like it meant something. Where did that version of her go? Did she die the night I found her in someone else's arms? Or had she been slipping away for months and I'd just been too in love, or too blind to see it? Sometimes, I'd walk through the grocery store on my day off and catch a glimpse of a woman with dark hair and a familiar walk, and my heart would seize before I realized it wasn't her. I hated how my body still reacted, like some loyal dog waiting by the door for someone who already packed their things and left. I never answered her messages, but I kept her final voicemail. Not because it helped, not because it explained anything, but because part of me needed to hear her voice now and then, to remember that she was real, and that the love we shared wasn't a dream. It was short, Mark, I don't know where you are. I don't know if you'll ever listen to this. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to know that I still think about you. Every day. I never played it more than once. One afternoon, I was making a delivery downtown when I saw a couple through a coffee shop window. She was laughing and he was looking at her the way I used to look at Lauren, like she was the sun in the middle of his winter. And I realized in that moment that I hadn't smiled, really smiled, in weeks. Not because I couldn't, but because I'd forgotten how. And maybe that was the worst part of all of it. Not the betrayal, not the lies, not the quiet death of trust, but the way it all stole parts of me I didn't know were vulnerable. Like how I started flinching at affection, or how I stopped believing people when they said, forever. Still, I kept going. Somehow. Some days that meant just getting out of bed. Other days it meant watching bad TV until 3 a.m. and letting myself cry for 5 minutes before pretending I was fine again. And eventually, the silence stopped feeling like punishment. It became peace. A weird, unfamiliar kind of peace, the kind you find only after losing everything. When you stop checking the door for someone who's not coming home. When you stop asking why and just start accepting that some things break because they were meant to. Lauren stopped messaging after a while. I imagine she got tired. Or maybe she finally understood that I wasn't going to be the man who let her cry her way back in. I didn't keep track of how much time passed. But I remember the weather the day everything changed. It was raining. A slow, steady drizzle that made the streets shine like mirrors. I was sitting by the window, drinking bad coffee and watching water slide down the glass. That's when the knock came. Soft. 2 short taps. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one even knew I lived there. I opened the door and there she was. Lauren. Soaking wet. No coat. No umbrella. Just jeans, a hoodie, and a look in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. Like the storm outside had followed her all the way to my door. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there, dripping onto the hallway carpet, eyes glassy and red. I didn't say anything either. What could I say? Finally, she held up a folded piece of paper, her hand shaking slightly. I wrote this a long time ago, she said. The night you left. I never sent it. I don't even know if it means anything now. But I had to try. I took the letter, but I didn't open it. She didn't ask to come in. She just stood there, waiting. Her lip quivered like she wanted to say something. Maybe beg. Maybe confess. Maybe both. But I didn't let her speak. And I didn't step aside. We stood there for what felt like hours. Rain soaking her to the bone. My heart silent in my chest. And for the first time since I walked out of our home, I felt in control. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just clear. I didn't let her in. Not at first. She just stood there, dripping wet in the hallway like something out of a dream I'd once had and tried to forget. Her hair was soaked through, sticking to her cheeks, and her hoodie clung to her like it had fused with her skin. The rain didn't seem to bother her. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. In her hand, she still held the letter, folded neatly, protected somehow from the weather that had ruined everything else. Neither of us spoke. I looked at her face, really looked at it. For the first time in over a year, she looked older, not in a bad way, just worn, tired. Her eyes didn't hold the same sharpness they used to, the same fire that used to spark when she'd talk about her goals, her clients, her next project. That fire was gone, and in its place, a kind of quiet devastation. Still, I didn't say anything. I stood in the doorway with my hand on the knob and my heart beating somewhere between numb and not interested. She looked down at her feet, like she was preparing herself for rejection. I know I'm the last person you want to see, she said finally, her voice hoarse from the cold or the crying. I couldn't tell, and maybe I shouldn't have come, but I didn't know where else to go. You didn't know where else to go? I repeated, more stunned than angry. She nodded once. Her lip trembled, and she bit it hard, like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. I'm not here to make excuses, she added. I never got to say goodbye. I didn't respond. I just stepped aside. I don't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was closure. Or maybe, on some deeper level, I needed to see her cry. To know she didn't get off easy. That I wasn't the only one still carrying the wreckage of what we used to be. She walked in slowly, hugging her arms around her chest, her shoes leaving muddy prints on the cracked wooden floor. The apartment hadn't changed. Still small, still bare. A mattress in the corner, an old table, 2 chairs. No pictures. No warmth. She looked around like she wasn't sure what she expected. "This is where you've been?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I nodded. More or less. "It's quiet." I didn't respond. She stood in the center of the room like she didn't know what to do with her body. Her fingers fiddled with the edges of the letter. Finally, she looked at me again. Her eyes were tired but honest. "I wrote this the night you left," she said. "I didn't know how to reach you. I thought maybe it didn't matter. That maybe you hated me too much to care. But I still carried it. Every day. I don't know why." She held it out to me again. I took it. Still didn't open it. "You can read it later," she added. We sat down at the table. The chairs creaked under our weight. The silence between us louder than anything she could have said. The rain was still falling outside, tapping softly against the window like a metronome counting down the seconds between us. "You look different," she said, studying me the way someone looks at a house they used to live in. "Not bad. Just different. Life does that." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I know I can't fix anything," she said. "I know that. I needed you to know that I've been carrying this. All of it. Every day. It didn't go away for me." I stared at her. "Then why didn't you reach out before now?" "I thought about it. 100 times. But I knew you didn't want to hear from me. And maybe I didn't deserve to be heard." "You didn't." She flinched. But she didn't argue. "I wasn't myself back then," she said, staring down at her hands. "Or maybe I was, and I just didn't want to admit who that person was." "And who is she now?" I asked. "I don't know yet," she whispered. There was no anger in my voice when I spoke next. No sarcasm. Just the tired truth. "I needed you to be the one person in my life I didn't have to question. And you turned that into a guessing game I never wanted to play." She looked up, her eyes full of something I couldn't read. "I know. You could have come to me. You could have told me things weren't working. That you were lonely. That you were lost. But instead, you decided to set fire to everything." "I was selfish," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I could have both. That I could fix myself without breaking you. But I was wrong." A long silence passed. "You didn't even say goodbye," she added, almost accusingly. "Would it have mattered?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But maybe I would have suffered sooner." The word "suffered" hung in the air like smoke. I looked at her, really looked at her. This wasn't the woman who cheated on me. This wasn't the confident liar who made excuses and spun stories like silk. This was someone else. Someone stripped down to the bone. I don't know how long we sat there. 5 minutes? 15? The rain kept falling. Finally, I reached for the letter. She watched me unfold it like she wasn't sure if she wanted me to read it in front of her. I scanned the first few lines. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. It wasn't a defense. It wasn't a plea. It was grief. It was guilt. It was regret poured out in ink from someone who had ruined something and didn't know how to live with what she'd done. When I looked up, her eyes were already full of tears. "Mark," she said softly, "I didn't come here hoping you'd take me back. I just needed you to know that it wasn't meaningless. That you weren't meaningless." I leaned back in the chair. "You think I don't know that?" I asked. "Do you think I disappeared because I didn't care?" "No," she said, her voice cracking. "I think you disappeared because you did." And there it was. The truth finally spoken between us. Not as a we*p*n. Not as a trap, but as a surrender. We sat there a little longer. No more confessions. No more questions. Just the weight of everything we couldn't take back. Eventually, she stood. She didn't ask to stay. She didn't try to hug me. She just looked at me one last time and said, "I'm sorry. For all of it." I nodded. I know. Then she left. No storm. No breakdown. Just a quiet exit through the same door I'd opened for her all those years ago when we first moved in together. Before everything unraveled. Before the lies. Before the goodbye I never got. This time I got it. And somehow that made all the difference. She said it wasn't love, it was escape. A way to forget herself, not me. Her voice shook as she admitted it. The affair wasn't passion, just numbness. She claimed she never stopped remembering me, even in his arms. I held the letter she wrote back then. It didn't excuse anything. It only confirmed what I already knew. She lost herself long before she lost me. I didn't forgive her. I didn't send her away. We sat in silence, both understanding what couldn't be rebuilt. The version of us that laughed in airports and whispered in the dark, that was gone. She cried. I didn't. The cost had already been paid. Her tears weren't victory or closure. They were just consequence. I walked her out the door. She didn't ask for more, and I didn't look back.